All right, good morning, everybody. Can you guys just give me a quick happy face? Just let me know my sound is okay today. Awesome. Thanks, Beth Ann. If you were in here earlier during the all-staff meeting, you'll know that I got kicked out earlier. I don't know what happened. My power decided to go out this morning, so happy Monday, everybody. I had to have Lauren come back in and give me new moderator privileges. So here's hoping things go well for the rest of our time this morning. I apologize for the all-school meeting going a little bit late, but I promise I won't take up too much of your time. I just have a couple of things that I wanted to share with you guys since PLT time will be starting up shortly. Okay, so basically what I have for you today is just examples of some K2 reading interventions, some activities that you can do across all the different areas of literacy development for our K2 learners. Okay, at any point during this, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or if you could possibly wait until the end, and I'll try to address them as best I can. I do have some resources that I'm going to push out to you. If they popped up for you already, that's great, but I'll be sure to send those out to you again at the end as well. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about this morning is how do we administer interventions. I know a lot of us have misconceptions as to what an intervention lesson should look like as composed to a core content lesson that you might be doing in your language arts or your math or your science and social studies lessons in the morning. So this is actually a great resource for you to kind of keep in mind as you're planning those PLT groups in the afternoon. Basically, how we administer an intervention to a student is we follow this, what's called a 6-part framework that helps you kind of individualize instruction and identify when a particular method that you're using with a student just really isn't working. So what I found that works the best is basically try to break down the task into parts. You know, don't give them too much to do at one time. Demonstrate the task or part for the learner to make sure you're doing a lot of modeling, which you guys do all the time anyway. Support the learner while he or she tries the task or part, so making sure to give them an attempt at it and see how they do on their own without your support. Providing feedback to the learner as you see how they, how they're working through that specific skill that you're working on. Repeating those couple of steps until you're giving minimal support. So you're kind of, taking away that scaffolding, if you will, just to make sure that they're able to do the activity on their own. And if you see that, when the learner actually tries the activity on their own, if they're not meeting your expectations and you see that they're still really struggling, just go back and try it again, or you may need to choose a different strategy or different way of approaching the skill that you're trying to get across to the student. Does that make sense to everybody? So you're basically just taking a skill or maybe a standard that a student isn't quite grasping. Make sure you're breaking it down into smaller pieces. We talk a lot about, making sure that kids have the prerequisite skills needed in order to master a standard. So if you see they're not getting a piece of it, you kind of might need to backtrack and just go over the pieces that you may not be working in. Say, for instance, in my team in second grade, we expect students to know, a lot of what they learned in first grade. Maybe they didn't quite grasp that in first grade. So that might be a part that you need to go back and kind of re-go over so that they're able to master the standard that you want them to accomplish. Okay? All right. Here are some examples, and I actually have a really great resource for you that has everything in this presentation. I can also make sure we send out the PowerPoint to you too if you need it. But there's a book in the file transfer that I'll send out at the end that has every possible reading intervention you can imagine. It's fantastic. I'll share that with you a little bit later. But this is where I got all of my information as far as intervention activities and research methods that are proven to work. So basically what I'm going to do first is just go over some interventions that you can try for print concepts. This might be more so for our kiddos in kindergarten or early first grade who are still learning about books, learning about contents of print, learning their letters, that phonemic awareness, all of those skills. So one type that you can try is actually going through the print conventions. Factors that influence the learning of print conventions with students is their auditory memory for words, visual memory for features. Do they know what a period is? Do they know what a colon is? Capitals, boldface type, that kind of stuff that they would actually see on a page in a book. Understanding of purpose or concepts for these features, like why do we use periods? I know in second grade we're doing a lot with that with our writing lessons. You know, why do we use a period at the end of a sentence? Why do we use an exclamation point? What is the purpose of having punctuation marks? Why do we use capital letters? Things like that. Frequency of experience with these features in different types of text. So make sure you're mixing up your types of stories, whether you're using fiction stories, nonfiction stories, poems, you know, even just short sentences or phrases, just to kind of get these kids used to seeing different types of text. These are some games and things that you can try to get kids familiar with books. This one is called Finding the Feature, where you're talking about the parts of a book. This, again, would be good for kindergarten kiddos or early first grade if maybe they didn't quite master that skill in kindergarten. You know, in addition to modeling your book handling skills, enjoying like guided or shared read-alouds or things that you're doing in class, you want to make sure that you give the kids some hands-on practice finding book features with, you know, different types of activities. This is just one example. You can select different books and place them randomly, you know, even on your whiteboard in a virtual environment. This one is based on, you know, doing it in an actual classroom. You can have parents do this one at home with kids too and have them actually place books around the table, making sure that some are upside down, some are face up so that they kind of can see the difference. Asking students to rearrange the book so that the covers are face up. Make sure they know where the cover of the book is and the information that that gives us. Having students point to all the titles, then mix up the books again and have them do it so that only the backs of the books they're showing. It's really just making sure that they understand, you know, the different parts of the book title, the back cover, the spine, the illustrator, the author, what is a title page, that kind of thing. This can also be done as a game. If each child is given a set of books, you know, they can score points. If the books are all correct, you know, give them a certain amount of points. So you can give 1 point each for each correct book, depending on the level of the child. Or students can work together. If you want to do this as like a partner work activity, yeah, just kind of like I Spy, like Jill had said in the chat. You can do that as well. Same thing, same concept. Let's see, another one for book familiarity. Oh my gosh, I can't talk today. It's Monday. Sorry, guys. Book familiarity. Sorry. We work a lot with tracking. I know as reading specialists, Jill and I and Melissa, you know, we work a lot with kids on tracking, especially if they're having, you know, troubles keeping their, you know, their place in a sentence, even when they're reading just short CBM passages for us. So following print and tracking is another activity you can try. So listening to taped books, if you have, you know, I know a lot of us use YouTube videos of books, or if you have just an audio version of a book and you want the kids to listen to it and have a copy of the words on the screen that they can see, it's just allowing them to point to each word in the printed text. It's just really great practice for them to develop directionality in reading, especially when we practice the return sweep, you know, going from one line to the next, and making sure to start them with simple books and work our way up. You know, start at the lowest level you could possibly think of, and then kind of build your way up, especially if they're a struggling reader and they're not, you know, maybe they're at that pre-reading stage where they're not quite reading yet, those early emergent readers. So try your best to, you know, think about the level of your kids and kind of work your way up. Model how to point to text until students feel confident pointing on their own. Just making sure they're tracking, you know, following, you know, the sentences from left to right, and then when we get to the end of the sentence, we start back at the beginning on the left side of the next sentence. Just really getting them familiar with tracking and following print. This one deals with text features, and I thought this was great too, even for those grammar and writing lessons, even that we've been doing in second grade as far as punctuation and sentence types go. This game is called Punctuate That Sentence. So what you can do is you can select several sentences to read aloud and write them on a chart using punctuation. Give students sticky notes, or in our virtual classroom you can use movable pieces with 1 punctuation mark written on each. I know we've done this in second grade in some of our language arts lessons. But this can be done in a short intervention lesson as just a game. Model it for them and let them practice on their own. And then you have to read the sentence and ask the students to put the sticky notes or the movable pieces with the appropriate punctuation marks where they need to be. So as the students are placing the marks, make sure you're discussing the purpose of each of those punctuation marks. You know, why do we use a question mark? Why do we use an exclamation point, a period, so on and so forth? What kind of sentence do you think this is? We use a question mark when we're using an asking sentence or a question sentence. Just kind of trying to tie all of those elements together. This is an example that I found on Google. This is called planting punctuation. It's kind of the same concept. You're really just making sentences and giving them those movable punctuation marks. And these were just punctuation cards that I found as well. So that's just an example of something you can try. Maybe your student is struggling with types of sentences, or when to use punctuation marks, or what a punctuation mark even is. You can try this game with them. This one deals with text concepts, and if I'm going too fast, guys, please just slow me down. I tend to talk really fast. So just let me know if there's something that I'm missing or that you're not quite catching on to just yet. Okay, this one talks about text concepts, and this one is basically to develop an understanding of words and letters, basically how a sentence is formed. So we're using a tactic called cutting up sentences, which is a fun game that I found that you can try. And basically what this means is you're writing a sentence on a sentence strip, or maybe you're just typing a sentence so that it's on a blackboard screen where the students can see it. Asking the students to cut up the sentence. So maybe you're using your typing tool on our Blackboard room. You can kind of use separate words so that the pieces are movable. Cutting the sentence up into words, and then they can count the number of words and then reassemble the sentence so that it makes sense. So a more advanced version, you can, after the students have reassembled the words in the sentence, you can have them cut up the words into letters. And then they can count the number of letters in each word and reassemble the word. So you're getting sentence and word practice, if that makes sense. Just to give them kind of an added challenge. But it's great for them to see, how we put sentences together and to make sure our sentences make sense. Every sentence needs to have a subject, a verb, making sure it has a capital letter, so on and so forth. All right, here's the big one. Word recognition. I know this is an area that a lot of students struggle with, especially kiddos that Jill and Melissa and I see in our classes as well. Interventions for word recognition. Some best practices that I found. Make sure you're identifying the reading levels and needs of your kids. Obviously don't give them something that's too hard for them to read. Select the appropriate level of book for those students' competencies. You want to make sure that it's a just right book. Design a lesson to address their needs, depending on which word recognition skill you're working on. Using appropriate intervention strategies during the lesson in response to students, and assessing learning and the lesson to determine the next step. So obviously if you see something that's not quite going right in your lesson, you might need to change of pace and try something different. So in the area of word recognition, those lessons really need to focus on direct instruction of cueing strategies, and I'll go over those in just a second. Word study, vocabulary development. The direct instruction should be short and build on previous learning. We talked about those prerequisite skills that students need in order to master certain standards. Well, here's where those are going to come into play. Yes, message time has been awesome, and there's so much. We can even talk about that a little bit later. There's so much stuff you can do even just within message time that's really beneficial as far as, practicing word recognition strategies. So for example, when you're working on a visual cueing strategy, a teacher might instruct students on, for example, an AME pattern, AIM. Okay, maybe like a long A pattern. Or have them do a practice sheet on identifying the initial sounds of pictured objects. In addition to direct instruction, incorporating oral reading of familiar books increases oral fluency and is excellent practice for developing word recognition skills. Your lesson duration for these should be no more than 15 to 20 minutes max. You're just doing a quick modeling of the skill and make sure to give the kids, ample time to practice that skill. A good rule of thumb is to plan 2 or 3 lessons with a word recognition focus per week. The initial reading of the text is 1 lesson. So I know in 2nd grade, Melissa and I and a lot of our 2nd grade teachers have taken the time to go into Reading A to Z, and we've actually downloaded all of the Reading A to Z books for the kindergarten through 2nd grade level. So if you guys need them, we have them in Google Drive, and we are happy to share those out with you if you need resources. Just please remember not to delete them out of Google Drive because we won't be able to get them. Yeah, we'll share the drive. I'll share the drive out at the end. Just make sure you're downloading them and, or make a copy for yourself, whatever's easier. Just please don't delete them all off the drive so that everybody has access to them since they're in a shared drive. Okay. So a good thing, and I know I've done this in the past, you know, when you're talking about word recognition skills, say you're teaching a phonics skill to certain students, maybe students don't understand the short A sound. Maybe they're having a lot of trouble with their vowel sounds. You can take one of those reading A to Z books, and there are actually books that focus on that specific skill, and you can do a story with the kids and teach that skill in context. You know, have them look for words that have that specific target sound that you're looking for. They can go in and highlight words in the book. You know, I have a lot of them in there so that they're all PDFs. You can cut and paste them onto a PowerPoint and load them into Blackboard so they're right there. So you can give the kids a lot of use of the tools and able to actually play with the text and use that skill in context. Some appropriate interventions during reading. So this is if you are doing a story with the kids and you see that something just isn't quite right. For example, this is an example of a student reading a sentence. They read, "The dog is racing home." In the parentheses and the brackets here, you see the actual word was running. Okay. It kind of gives you an insight as to what kind of strategies they're using when they're trying to decode words. And I'll teach you a little bit more about each of those cueing strategies, and they are in the book that I'm going to push out to you as well. This is just saying that the student actually used their strategies for word meaning and structure. They did not, however, rely on anything, you know, visual. They needed more work with like a visual cueing strategy. We know this because the kid made the sentence make sense. They were able to, you know, read that sentence and insert a word that still the sentence kind of made sense, so they're using that meaning cue, and the words were similar so that they failed to look carefully at a visual skill. So you can see racing and running were similar because it begins with an R sound. They just kind of inserted a different word that made sense to them. It might not have anything to do with the story, but at least they were trying to make sense of the sentence. So you can still see that they were using certain strategies but may need work in others. So something you might say to that child, you know, look at the word that you called racing. Put your finger under it and say it slowly. Do the letters say the sounds in racing that you told me the word had said? So what small word do you see in it? The teacher can point to run in running. Pronounce the word if maybe the student isn't sure how to say that word, and you can reread the sentence and make sure that the student understands the actual meaning of that sentence. You can kind of look at how they're performing as they're reading and kind of intervene, you know, in context of their reading. It doesn't have to be an actual separate lesson per se. Am I losing anybody? Are you guys okay so far? Just give me a happy face if you're okay so far. I just wanted to kind of arm you with some ideas of things you can use so that you're not, you know, not so far out in left field when it comes to doing these actual PLT sessions with your kiddos. Okay, this is one of the cueing strategies that you're going to work with your kids. You know, when they're trying to decode words, you can really see, you know, what's happening in their brain. What are they doing to try to figure out what that word is? So this is the meaning strategy. You can practice this strategy by taking a picture walk through books and looking at illustrations before reading, so they're kind of making that connection as to what can be happening in the story. Activating that background knowledge before reading, introducing vocabulary or unknown words. It's best taught during the oral reading of a book, but a good introduction to the book can help the students use that strategy as they read. So reading to students on various topics can also enhance that background knowledge, so they have the knowledge going in to help them as they're reading. All right, the next one is structure. These are some activities that you can use to practice structure of sentences or words. This strategy refers to the language structure to read words. So effective use of this strategy depends on a child's understanding of the structure of the English language. Students who speak in a dialect or, you know, maybe have, you know, our ESL students that might have limited English proficiency, find that this strategy is very challenging for them and they need some extra support with it. This strategy is best taught in the context of oral reading as well. Some other activities that might enhance this particular cueing strategy, you can do things like hide a word. which is a closed activity. If you've ever heard of what a closed activity is. Which means during a shared or guided reading of a text, you can put a piece of paper over a word in each sentence, or you can kind of put our boxes over a word. Ask the students to tell what word could be used there. So you want them to make sure that the sentence makes sense. Put the selection into the reading that they said of the sentence to see if it makes sense to them. Then remove the paper or the box to see if they correctly identified the word. They can give you different examples of words, as long as the actual overall sentence makes sense. Nonsense sentences is another activity you can try. You're creating nonsense sentences such as, the dog quickly for his food. You're purposely leaving words out. Or John borrowed the running for the afternoon. You have to read one sentence at a time and ask the kids what is wrong in the sentence. The children respond, and then you evaluate their responses. And you can use this in kind of a game format with a small group. So you really want them to understand, what does a sentence need in order to make sense? Well, you can tell there's definitely things missing from these sentences. So hopefully, that's a skill you can work on, having them pick out those certain pieces of a sentence. Excuse me, sorry. This is another one that a lot of kids have a tough time with. This is a visual cueing strategy. This is where phonics comes into play. And if they don't have that sound-symbol relationship as far as letters and sounds and the actual phonic skills they need to decode words, this is where it can get tricky. Okay, so basically, the visual cueing strategy is a lot more complex than the others that we talked about so far. In order for this strategy to be useful to students, they must learn the various phonemes and spelling patterns to be able to substitute letters for words with a pattern to come up with new words. We have to understand sound segmenting. Those phoneme segmentation skills are very important. And students need to be able to break apart words and sounds of a word in order to blend the sounds together. They need to be able to take the words apart and put them back together. The student needs to be able to hold the meaning of the text while reading and applying these sounds. It can take a couple of years for kids to learn this strategy. That's why it's so difficult. We see a lot of our kiddos struggling with actual decoding of words is really what this is. Students learn beginning and ending sounds first, and then you can focus on vowel sounds. So make sure you're kind of teaching those consonant sounds first. They first associate the sounds with individual letters, and then they learn basic phonics clusters. So this skill includes the use of phonics, so you want to make sure that they're learning phonemes, different spelling patterns, phoneme substitution, where they're changing out letters, word patterns, sound segmenting, breaking apart the sounds in words, and the blending of sounds to decode a word. Some examples of segmentation activities that you can try would be clapping words. You can clap out the words in sentences, poetry, or songs. Marking words basically just means you're using blocks or markers or boxes to symbolize words. And I actually have a strategy that I'm going to push out to you at the end that you can use more so with the sounds in a word, the actual phoneme sounds. So as you read a sentence, you move one marker forward for each word read, and the students can use individual sets of markers and move one for each word they hear in a sentence. You can also do something similar. And the strategy that I'm going to push out to you is for words. So you're actually using one colored block for each sound that they hear in the word, just as an example. So you're able to distinguish the different sounds that they hear in a word that you're giving them. These are examples for syllable segmentation. You can clap out syllables. I know a lot of us do this already with 2 to 3 syllable words. Marking syllables, again, same concept as the word segmentation. Using blocks or markers to symbolize syllables. As you read a word, you move one marker forward for each syllable that you hear. Later on, as they practice this skill, the kids can use individual sets of markers and move one for each syllable they hear in a word. So as they get better with it, you can try to increase the difficulty just a little bit. Let's see. The next one is for sound segmentation. Again, this one is for marking sounds. Similar to what we talked about earlier, you can use the blocks or markers to symbolize sounds, showing the sounds in one syllable. Regular words, moving the marker forward for each sound as you say it. with one-syllable words, you really, really want to make sure that you start with one-syllable words that are short and long vowels and no digraphs. Digraphs, as we've learned in second grade, are tricky for some of our kids. We're teaching digraphs and blends kind of almost at the same time, and the kids are getting really confused because they're not able to differentiate between the two. So you really want to make sure when you start, if you try this activity, just make sure you're doing it with short, one-syllable words with either a long vowel or a short vowel. Letter sound boxes. So as the students are writing, you can use boxes to help them form the word. I did this a lot with my kids last year. So they know how many sounds a word has, which relates to how many letters a word has, and helps to develop that sound symbol relationship and correspondence. Okay, some phonics activities. You can try finding initial and ending sounds. This is for kiddos who are learning their initial and final sounds. It's important to provide plenty of practice identifying these sounds in words. A lot of this we talked about doing in context. There's reading A to Z books, literally when I tell you, for every phonics skill you can teach. So it's good to include those stories as well. You can use traditional worksheets where a picture is given and the student must write the initial or final sound that they're hearing. You can also use book vocabulary in an activity which the sounds are left off of the word. So you pronounce the word and the students write in the sound. For example, if you say anket, like you're saying blanket, they have to figure out the blending sound that you're using. What sounds can we come up with to make this word make sense? Another phonics activity you can try is word families. I know Jill and I and Lauren, we did a lot of word families in the past in K-2. So Melissa, this is something that is going to come in handy for you this year. The kids really like this. You can try in rhyming words with this. Like, it's great. So you can try word family fill-ins, which means you're just taking a word family and writing in several times in a column, leaving off the initial sound. So you're asking the students to add letters to the beginning of the word family to create real words. Like, for example, cat, hat, bat. I did a lot of this in context with the cat and the hat when I did Dr. Seuss Week last year and the year before, which seemed to work really well because there was a lot of words that the kids can use in the at family in those stories. Just as an example. Oral read. This is now we're going to get into actual oral reading and fluency activities. So now you're past the phonics part and you need, activities for a little bit higher of a skill. Now you're more focused on fluency and actually getting the kids to read with feeling and emotion and, just fluently with speed. You can try repeated reading. This is all types of repeating readings are very, very helpful for kids. And I've even done this with my kids who are struggling readers, exposing them to the same story over a couple of days, if not a week, so that they're really getting familiar with the text. Even if they struggle with decoding, they're hearing and seeing that text every day and they're reading it with you. So it's allowing them to feel successful. They're able to pretty much, some kids actually memorize it when you read it a lot. No worries, pretty thanks. So some examples are reading together or choral reading. You'll need to support students as they read by prompting them to use the cueing strategies that we talked about when they make an error or they get stuck on an unfamiliar word. A lot of times we say, take your time, sound it out, try to decode the word on your own, and if they're really stuck, you can always just tell them the word. Rereading of familiar books. A lot of kids, have heard different children's stories as they've been growing up. So they might be familiar with a lot of books, like The Giving Tree is one of my favorite books. I know that book was read to me a lot when I was growing up. Brown Bear is another one that's very familiar. Very Hungry Caterpillar. A lot of those books the kids already know. So having students reread familiar books on a regular basis during guided reading lessons or in class. These books can be read in shared reading or in guided reading. An objective for each guided reading instruction unit needs to be that all students are fluent with the book and can individually read it fluently to you. So this might be where you're practicing just that fluency skill. You want to make sure that they can read it with expression and be able to read it back to you independently. Another thing you can do is reading plays. I've done this in second grade before with the Henny Penny Chicken Little story and the Little Red Hen, where the kids get to play the different characters. It helps them practice reading with expression and reading fluently. So primary students and elementary kiddos, they enjoy reading plays, and they're a good experience for developing that oral fluency and verbal expression. A lot of these plays can be found at different reading levels. There are some in Reading A to Z, so if there's something you're looking for, just please let one of the reading specialists know. And I did find out. I think I talked to Lisa Samar, and she said hers was a little bit different in third grade. I'm not sure what happened, but Melissa, I can tell you, as far as I know, I think our Reading A to Z has been renewed. So if there's something that you need, please feel free to let us know. We can definitely check it out for you and see if we can find anything. Jill, I'm not sure if you checked yours. Is yours working? My Ross Kids is working. My Reading A to Z is working. So hopefully yours is working as well. But there are lots of plays. Oh, your Reading A to Z is working. Okay. Yeah, I was able to get into Ross Kids too, so I would try that and see. That's good to use with our kiddos too. There's a couple, plays that you can try in there. I have one example. I'm pretty sure I have Henny Penny saved. Chicken Little is another one you can do with the different characters. So I'll be sure to send those out to you guys just as an example if you want to use it. Using easy text. An important consideration for developing oral fluency is the text level. Make sure it's a text your kids can read and understand. When children are experiencing difficulty with their present level of text and need to work on fluency, using books at lower levels of difficulty is a good way to begin, because you want to make them feel successful. You want them to become more fluent readers. Then you can gradually move them up to a text that's a little bit more difficult, as you go. All right. Sorry, guys. I know this is a lot, but when I tell you the book that I'm going to give you has all of this and in a lot more detail. So it's definitely going to be a great resource for you. Some word study activities that you can try. You can do what's called a sight word matchup. This deals primarily with sight words, all of the activities that you're going to see here. And I know a lot of our kids so far in second grade seem to be struggling with some of this, and I'm sure in kindergarten and first grade they are as well. Sight word matchup is to develop sight vocabulary, so you want to cover up some sight words on each page of a familiar book. You can write the words on index cards. You can read the sentence, skipping the word, and then ask the students to choose the correct word from the index cards that you've practiced. Another thing you can do, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I'm actually trying an intervention with one of my students tomorrow to see if this will help her. She has a lot of trouble with vision, and there may be some possible dyslexic issues there. So she's actually reading words backwards. So another, as far as sight words go, another approach you can try is taking more of a multisensory approach, where you're actually, and I'm doing this with her through video chat, so it's a little easier for her to see me and me to see her. But you actually write the sight words on index cards, as you would normally make flashcards. But the kids actually take the back of a pencil, like where the eraser would be, and they trace the word, but they have to say the letter that's each letter in the word, and as they're touching it, and then they have to underline the word and say the word. Another activity they do with a multisensory approach too is you can actually do what's called arm spelling, and I will show you. Just don't mind my crazy hand this morning, guys. You might have camel work. I can let you know how this works too, because I'm actually going to try it tomorrow for the first time. Okay, give me a smiley face if you guys can see me. Can everybody see me? Hopefully. Oh, good. Okay. The one thing you can try too is using your arms. Let me just angle this camera down a little bit. So basically, you take your writing hand, whatever hand that the student writes with, then hold out the opposite arms and say that they're doing the word the, just as an example of a sight word. You actually tap the word down your arm, so they say T-H-E, and then they have to go back up and slide down their arm and say the word the. So you're getting them up and getting them moving and getting more involved with the actual words that you're teaching. Just something to try, and I can report to you how this works tomorrow. We're also going to try stand writing to make a more tactile approach. So she is actually, her mom and I have been talking back and forth, and we actually got sand from the Dollar Tree. And you can actually write the words, practice writing the sight words in the sand so they can feel how each letter is formed as they're writing it. It could help more with their memory as they're seeing the words in text too. Just different ways to try to teach sight words. You can even try it with vocabulary. Yeah, shaving cream works too, pudding. I've also used in the past, I've used sandpaper letters so that it can actually feel the shape of the letters. Just one way to kind of get them more involved in the words that they're learning and try to, you know, touch all of those areas. Getting them moving. Maybe they're a visual learner, maybe they're a kinesthetic learner, and they need to get up and move and touch. Their tactile learners. Just different things to try to hopefully help them grasp those concepts. You can try, the matchup is just basically matching up the words. Sight word readers, there's lots of these we have in our Google Drive from Reading A to Z as well. You can try the readers with just a short text that contains many of the sight words that you're practicing. And you'll see when you open up the book, it'll tell you which exact sight words that are covered in that book, so you'll know which ones to use. You can do sight word concentration, where you're creating a game by preparing a set of cards with 2 of each target sight word that you're practicing, shuffling the cards. You can even do this in Blackboard, even just like a memory game. You have to, uncover a word and then try to match it up wherever it might be, but remembering where each of the words are if you don't make a match. I know a lot of us have done that in the past with not just sight words, but different words and things that you're using. Even math skills, I've seen that done with math too. Okay, now we get into comprehension. Comprehension just means that you're connecting what we know to the unknown. You're monitoring our comprehension as we read. We are adjusting our understanding once we see that it's faulty, so we know something's not quite right. Distinguishing important and less important details as we read. We're synthesizing information across text. We're drawing inferences. We're asking questions while we're reading. Okay, so lots of different ways that you can touch on comprehension in reading. A lot of comprehension strategies, and some of them we practice in class currently. Previewing, predicting, taking a book walk, self-questioning, making connections, visualizing, knowing how words work, monitoring, summarizing, evaluating. These are all different strategies that the kids can be using as they're reading to ensure that they're understanding what they're reading. And a lot of language patterns that you will find in a lot of our books that we're reading, they talk a lot about time order, which helps develop a storyline in chronological order. That's that recounting stories or retelling stories. Listing, which explains or describes one topic, such as flowers, through a series of facts and details. Comparing and contrasting, which categorizes the similarities and differences between 2 items. Cause and effect, which gives reasons for an event's occurrence. Problem and resolution, or problem and solution, as we sometimes call it, which details the problem and describes steps taken for its resolution or solution. A model lesson plan of instruction for comprehension would include things like identifying and activating a student's prior knowledge, connecting or linking that knowledge to the text, providing a reading guide or a question, either oral or written, that facilitates students' learning of the main elements of the text structure and or language patterns, and guiding the development of comprehension strategies so the student becomes an independent active reader. So you're kind of using those scaffolding techniques and slowly, taking your support away the more independent they become as they're reading. Let's see, here are some examples of comprehension activities you can try. Closed activities. I know Melissa has a lot of good comprehension activities that she's used in 4th grade that she can share with us in 2nd or 1st or kindergarten that could possibly help you if comprehension is what you're focusing on. Closed activities provide an opportunity for students to practice those cueing strategies and using context clues and language structure as they're reading. So you could reread a familiar story with the students. This is where you're covering up some of the target words. Just do it in one sentence at first and then kind of work your way down. Choosing words that students can figure out based on their knowledge of language, structure, or context clues, and making sure that the words you're choosing actually relate to the story. Rereading the story again And when you come to a couple of words, say blank and read to the end of the sentence. Then return to the sentence and reread it, stopping at the blank and asking the student which word would make sense in the blank. So giving them the opportunity to insert words, taking suggestions and rereading the sentence with their suggested words, just to make sure that they make sense, and then uncovering the word and have the students check their answers. So basically it's kind of like a fill in the blank, but it's in the context of a story. You can do some retelling and summarizing activities where the kids are, retelling what happened in the story as you finish a story. Make sure you're talking about the beginning, middle, and end. You can have the kids take turns retelling. It's amazing to see the difference in some kids. Some kids are hearing different parts than others, and their retellings are drastically different. It's really interesting to hear them. So just giving them those skills needed in order to make sure that they're including what happened in the beginning of the story, what happened in the middle of the story, what happened at the end of the story, making sure they're touching on key points in the story, and for really you just modeling that strategy with them will help them understand that concept as well. Finding beginning, middle, and end in a story is another activity you can try, where you model summary writing with a read-aloud story, including details from beginning, middle, and end of the story, and then have the kids do a retelling, making sure they include the beginning, middle, and end of the story. Just some other comprehension ideas. I won't go into details about these. These are also in the book that I'm going to give you. A main idea matchup, doing just right summaries. You can do a sum it up story map. You can do think aloud. Directed reading thinking activities. A game called Visualize This, where you're using a lot of visualization strategies. A story structure web, response journals, the KWL chart, which I know a lot of us use already. A missing facts game, you can use this for facts and opinion. Picture problems for problem and solution. And picture details when you're looking for supporting details in a story. All right, I have a couple more, I promise. We will be done before we have to go to our next session in order to take a quick break. These are just some interventions for writing. I know writing is a huge thing for a lot of K2 kiddos. So just making sure that you're touching on their writing in addition to their reading. You can do alphabet activities for writing, where they can do individual alphabet books. You can practice saying the letter. You can do sensory letters, which we talked about. Where we talked about doing it with sight words. You can do the same thing with letters and letter sounds. You can create tactile letters. This is more making sure they understand the formation of the letters themselves when they're writing. For mechanics, you can practice handwriting, a game called Copy It, where the students have to copy words, poetry, or short pieces of writing. The students should be given ample practice in this way so that the letter formation becomes automatic. So basically, you're just wanting them to copy words and sentences or any short piece of writing, so they're getting used to how the letters look, and it helps them practice their actual letter formation when they're writing. For spelling, you can do word sorting, creating word cards for words generated that maybe you made it in the handwriting activities that you tried. You can use word families for this. You can distribute the word cards and different mechanics activities. There's all examples that are in the book. And then you can actually discuss the spelling pattern that you're teaching them and ask the kids to sort by those specific patterns. Let's see. There are different activities you can try for punctuation. Some of them we talked about earlier that you can use as well. Placing the punctuation at the end of each sentence, so on and so forth. This one's called Place the Punctuation. You can do one for capitalization. Grammar, you can do a noun-verb mashup. There's all different kinds of activities that you can try. Again, these are all in the book that I'm going to share with you. That is a great read for anybody. You can do, when you're doing genre writing, this might be more for, late second grade, or even late first grade if you wanted to try it. You can use genre organizers. You can create graphic organizers that have spaces for different components of a particular genre. Where if you're doing narrative writing, if you're doing persuasion, different kinds of writing that you're doing. What's missing? This is, again, is understanding the beginning, middle, and end. You can use story organizers when you're practicing literary elements and having kids, write their retellings or what happened in a story. You could do oral practice where you're having kids fill in the blanks. Journaling, we do a lot of journaling in Message Time Plus where they're responding to prompts, so that's a good way to practice their writing as well. And now we get to the resources. There's a lot of fun stuff I have to share with you. The best resource I can give you today is the Reading Assessment and Intervention Strategies book. I got this book from Scholastic, and it has everything. Like, it gives you so many different examples of games and strategies and interventions that you can use from kindergarten up to second grade. I also have something called Elkinen boxes. I was talking about this earlier, where the kids can practice the sounds that they hear in a word, that phoneme segmentation. They can use a color for each sound that they hear in the word, and they kind of just distinguish how many sounds are there. I have this already made for you in whiteboard format. And then this one is called an alphabetic arc. This you can use, this would be more so for K and 1. If you have some students in second grade that still don't know their letters, this would be great for them too. You can actually take the letter tiles at the bottom and they can match up the letters, saying the name of each letter as they go. You can even take it so far as to saying the sound for the letter as well. There's one for lowercase letters and capital letters. Again, already in whiteboard format for you, so ready to go. Another thing you can do with this one is you can do alphabetizing, so alphabetical order. You can practice putting the letters in order. All right, so let me push those out to you quick if you didn't get them already. This is the book that has all of the K through 2 interventions that I went over today. This is the Elkinen boxes, so just save these somewhere safe so you have them. The alphabetic arc for uppercase letters and the arc for lowercase letters. Just give me a green check, guys, when those come out for you, just to make sure they came out okay. I can also send them out to you all in an email as well. I could send them to Lauren and have Lauren push those out for you as well. All right. Any questions? I know I kind of went a little quickly, but I just wanted to kind of give you some ideas. So when you start forming your PLT groups, you're kind of not going in like, what do I do? So if you need anything in the future, please reach out to myself or Melissa or Jill, any of our K2 reading specialists. We'd be happy to give you any resources that we have. I will also set up invites for you guys so you have access to the Reading A to Z book. Like I said, just please try not to delete them because they took us a long time to get them in there. Anything else you need, feel free to let us know. Thanks, guys. Hope it was helpful. Yeah, Amanda, I agree. They are really, really helpful. There's a lot of different assessments you can try in there too. It really is going to give you a feel for where your kids are, what skills they actually need help with as well. You're welcome. I apologize if I had to fly through some things. We kind of got started a little bit late. I'm trying to give you a break before our next one. Thanks, guys. Any questions, feel free to stick around. Hop on the mic, type in the chat, let me know. But I'll be sure to get all these resources out to you this afternoon.